My name is Margaret Hartwell. I'm 67 years old, and on a Tuesday afternoon in April of last year, my daughter looked me dead in the eye and told me that the best thing I could do for her birthday was to disappear from her life. So I did, but not the way she expected. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please stay with me until the end. Let me start by telling you who I am, not who I became after all of this, but who I was before. I'm Margaret Hartwell. People who know me call me Peggy. I spent 35 years as a charge nurse at St. Mary's Hospital in Portland, Oregon. Night shifts, double shifts, holidays, New Year's Eves. I worked them all. I've held the hand of a man taking his last breath at 3 a.m. while his family was stuck in traffic on the freeway. I've talked a 22-year-old through a panic attack in the ER while simultaneously managing 4 other patients. I've delivered bad news. I've delivered good news. I've delivered news that broke people in half and then watched them somehow put themselves back together. I know how to stay calm when everything is falling apart. That's not a personality trait. It's a skill you build after decades of being the person in the room who cannot afford to fall apart. I retired in March of 2025. 35 years, one hospital, one career. My colleagues threw me a party in the break room, chocolate cake from the bakery down the street, a card signed by what felt like half the hospital staff, and a small potted succulent with a little plastic stake that read, "You kept us all alive, Peggy." I laughed so hard I cried. I drove home that evening and sat in my apartment in Portland, a 2-bedroom place I'd lived in for 11 years, modest but mine, and I thought, now what? I had one answer: my daughter. Diane was 38 years old. She lived in Newport Beach, California, with her husband Trevor and their 10-year-old twins, Colton and Ava. She ran a high-end day spa called Lumiere in a part of Newport Beach where the parking lots have valet, and the women who walk in look like they've never experienced anything as inconvenient as a Tuesday. Diane was beautiful, polished, sharp. She had my cheekbones and her father's stubbornness and a talent for making a room pay attention to her that I'd always quietly admired, even when it worked against me. Her father, my husband Robert, died in a car accident in 1989. Diane was 2 years old. I was 31, alone, no family nearby, no safety net. I became a night shift nurse and a full-time mother simultaneously, running on 4 hours of sleep. And this particular kind of determination that only shows up when you have no other option. I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you this so you understand the arithmetic of what came next. When Diane was 9, she needed corrective surgery on her left foot, a congenital issue that had gotten worse over time. Insurance covered roughly half. I paid the other $8,400 out of pocket by picking up extra shifts for 4 months and selling the pearl earrings Robert had given me on our first anniversary. I didn't tell Diane about the earrings until she was an adult. She said, "Oh, Mom, you didn't have to do that." She said it the way you say something when you know it's the right thing to say, but you're already thinking about something else. When she was 18, she got into UC Irvine. I was so proud I taped her acceptance letter to the refrigerator for 6 months. Tuition, room, board, books. 4 years, 3 different majors, one very patient mother. Total cost to me: $31,000, cobbled together from savings, overtime pay, and a small personal loan I paid off over 3 years. When she was 22, she married a young man named Derek Paulson. They'd met in college, dated for 2 years, seemed happy enough. The wedding was at a hotel in Laguna Beach. 220 guests, a live band, imported flowers, a dress that cost more than my first car. I paid $18,500 for it and danced until midnight and told myself this was what all those night shifts were for. 18 months later, it was over. Derek and Diane divorced quietly, no drama, no contest. Just 2 young people who had realized they'd made a mistake. She kept the house they'd started renting together. He moved to Seattle. I drove down from Portland, stayed 2 weeks, held her while she sobbed, cooked her meals, took her on long walks by the water. I didn't say a word about the $18,000. Then came Trevor. Trevor Briggs was 41 years old, a real estate attorney, the kind of man who wore expensive watches and used the word leverage in casual conversation. He was polished and confident, and Diane looked at him like he had hung the moon. They got married in 2012, low-key by Diane's standards. I only paid for the flowers and the rehearsal dinner, around $4,000. I thought, this is different. This one is going to stick. In 2010, before Trevor, Diane had found the house in Newport Beach, a four-bedroom craftsman-style home 2 blocks from the water, listed at just under $1.2 million. She called me, voice shaking with excitement. Mom, this is the one. I can feel it. She put in an offer with Derek, but after the divorce, she bought him out and stayed. When she and Trevor married, his name went on the deed alongside hers and mine because I had put in $85,000 as part of the down payment. Money I had saved over 20 years of working nights and weekends and holidays. Money I had never spent on myself because I kept thinking, someday I'll use it for something important. I told myself this was important. In 2015, Diane came to me with a business plan. She wanted to open Lumiere. She had the concept, the contractor lined up. She needed seed money, $140,000. I didn't have it liquid, but I had equity in my apartment. I mortgaged my home. I want you to sit with that for a second. I mortgaged the roof over my head so my daughter could open a luxury spa. The loan was never repaid. Not a single payment in 10 years. When I brought it up gently in 2019, Diane said, Mom, the business is still finding its footing. You know I'm good for it. I nodded. I never brought it up again. In 2020, I was hospitalized for the first time. Exhaustion, elevated blood pressure, my body staging a quiet protest against 30 years of overwork. I was in the hospital for 3 days. Diane called once on the second day. The call lasted 4 minutes. She said she was sorry she couldn't come up. She had a big client consultation that week, and she really couldn't reskill. I said, that's okay, honey. I'm fine. When I hung up, I stared at the ceiling of my hospital room and listened to the sounds of the ward, the beeping machines, the soft footsteps of the night nurses, and I thought, I know this place better from the other side of the bed. In 2022, I was back in the hospital. Hypertension, more serious this time. 3 days became 5. Diane called on day 2. Trevor was having a birthday dinner that weekend. She was hosting 30 people. She just couldn't get away. I said, that's okay, honey. I'm fine. I was not fine. That same month, Trevor called me. Not Diane, Trevor. He said he had a tax situation with the spa's business filing. Something urgent. He needed $9,000 to cover it before the end of the quarter, or there'd be penalties. He said Diane didn't know he was calling. He didn't want to stress her out. He'd pay me back within 60 days. I transferred the $9,000 from the account where I kept my medication fund. Then I called my doctor and pushed my prescription refills back 3 months. I have never told anyone this. Not Ruth next door, not James at the hospital, not a single soul. I'm telling you now because I think it matters. I think it's important that you understand that the sacrifices I made didn't just cost me money. They cost me my health, and I kept paying anyway, with a smile on my face, because that's what I told myself a good mother did. The total, when I finally sat down and added it all up, $310,000 over roughly 20 years. That's not counting the emotional labor. That's not counting the sleep I lost, the vacations I never took, the things I never bought myself, because there was always something Diane needed more. I retired in March of 2025, 67 years old. For the first time in my adult life, I had nowhere to be and no one to take care of. I thought that was finally going to change. April 12th, 2025, Diane's 38th birthday. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, old nursing habit, the body doesn't forget, but also because I was genuinely excited. I'd spent the night before making her red velvet cake from scratch. Diane's favorite since she was 8 years old, cream cheese frosting, a little piped border that had taken me 2 attempts to get right. I packed it carefully in a carrier, loaded it into my Honda, and hit the road by 5:15, 6 hours. Portland to Newport Beach, down the I-5 with the radio on and the windows cracked and the particular feeling of a mother driving toward her child. I stopped once for gas and a bad cup of coffee outside Medford, and I remember thinking, this is nice. This is what retirement looks like. I pulled into Diane's neighborhood just before noon. The street was quiet and manicured, the rose bushes along the front walk in full bloom. I sat in the car for a moment and looked at the house. $85,000 of my life was in those walls. I'd never thought of it quite that way before. Trevor answered the door. Golf shirt, khakis, phone already in his hand. Peggy. Hey. He stepped aside. Diane's on a call. Of course, no worries. How are you, Trevor? Good, good. Busy week. Already walking back toward his office. Colton and Ava were cross-legged on the living room floor in front of the TV, matching in their school sweatshirts. Ava looked up. Hi, Grandma Peggy. Hi, baby girl. I leaned down and kissed the top of her head. Colton gave me a wave without taking his eyes off the screen. I carried the cake to the kitchen, set it on the island, and stood there in the silence of a house I had helped pay for, feeling like a delivery person. Diane came in 22 minutes later. I counted silk blouse, tailored pants, hair perfect, nails perfect, effortlessly put together in the way that actually takes a lot of effort and money. She glanced at the cake on the counter. Oh, you drove all the way down. Not quite a question, more like acknowledgement. The way you acknowledge traffic or weather. I wanted to surprise you. Happy birthday, sweetheart. She gave me a quick hug, the kind where both people lean in for half a second and pull back, then went to the fridge for a sparkling water. Didn't offer me one. Trevor and I have dinner reservations tonight, so I can't do a big thing, but you can stay for lunch if you want. That sounds perfect. Lunch was the four of us at the kitchen table. Trevor talked about a commercial property deal. Diane was on her phone more than off it. Colton and Ava argued about something at school. Nobody asked how I was doing. Nobody asked about retirement or Portland or what I'd been up to since the party in March. At one point, I said, I've been thinking about taking a pottery class just to say something, to exist. And Diane looked up, pottery. Just for fun, something to do with my hands. Huh, back to her phone. After lunch, Trevor took the kids out. I knew what that meant. I'd seen Diane clear a room before when she had something to say. We sat at the kitchen island. She folded her hands on the counter and looked just past me, not quite meeting my eyes. Mom, Trevor and I have been talking about the house. We want to refinance. Interest rates are shifting, and our advisor thinks it's a good window. That makes sense, I said carefully. The thing is, she paused. You're still on the deed as a co-owner, and the bank keeps flagging it. They want documentation of your financial situation, your income now that you're retired. It's creating complications. She said it quickly, like she'd rehearsed it. We need you off the deed. Something went very still inside me. The same stillness I felt in the ER when a situation was about to go sideways. Deanne, I put $85,000 into this house. I know, Mom, and we're so grateful. I mortgaged my apartment to give you the money to open Lumiere. Mom, I have never once asked you to pay back a single cent. My voice was quiet, steady. And now you're asking me to sign away my legal interest in this property. She finally looked at me directly. What I saw wasn't guilt. It was impatience. The specific kind that comes from someone who's already had this conversation in their head with their husband, probably multiple times in this very kitchen, and is mildly annoyed it's taking longer than expected. Mom, you're making this way more dramatic than it needs to be. It's just paperwork. It's not just paperwork, Diane. Look, she set her water down. While we're being honest, and I think we should be honest, your visits have been a lot lately. The calls, the dropping by, the just showing up. Trevor and I have our own thing going here, and you kind of throw it off. She waved her hand vaguely. It's a lot. It's been a lot for a while. I stared at her. I drove 6 hours to bring you a birthday cake. I know, and I love that, but I didn't ask you to, Mom. You just do things, and then there's this whole expectation that we all drop everything and make a big deal of it, and honestly, it's exhausting. I am a nurse. I have delivered some of the hardest news a human being can receive, and I have done it without losing my composure. I came very close that afternoon. Diane, I said slowly, your father died when you were 2. I raised you alone. I worked nights so you could sleep in a warm bed. I paid for your education, your surgery. When you were 9, Derek's wedding, your business, your down payment. I skipped my own medication so I could cover a tax bill Trevor called me about behind your back. She blinked. She hadn't known about that last part. And you're telling me, I continued, that I throw off your rhythm. Mom, I just think we need some space. How long have you been planning to say this to me? Silence. Diane, how long? She looked away. That small sideways look told me everything. This wasn't an impulse. This was a prepared conversation, something she and Trevor had discussed, probably in this kitchen, in this house with my name still on the deed. I stood up. I picked up my purse. I looked at the red velvet cake on the island, the frosting slightly soft from the drive, the piped border I'd redone twice to get right. Happy birthday, Diane, I said, and I walked out. I drove to Huntington Beach, muscle memory maybe, some instinct pulling me toward water. I parked near the pier, cut the engine, and sat there with the windows up for a long time. Nurses don't cry easily. You learn over the years to put things in a drawer and close it because the drawer will still be there when your shift ends. I had a lot of drawers built up over 35 years. That afternoon in that parking lot, I opened all of them at once. I cried for about 40 minutes, the ugly kind that fogs up windows and makes your whole face hurt. And then I stopped, because stopping is also something you learn. I watched the waves through the windshield. The Pacific is very big and very indifferent, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. I called James, Dr. James Whitfield, my colleague of 20 years at St. Mary's, the R physician, 2 doors down from the nurse's station, the man who brought terrible gas station coffee to every overnight shift and somehow made it feel like solidarity. He was 62, steady, and one of the only people I'd ever been fully honest with. He picked up on the second ring. Peggy, how's the birthday trip? I told him everything. All of it. The cake, the lunch, the deed conversation, the things Diane had said. And then the things I'd never told anyone. The $9,000, the medication I'd skipped, the 2 hospital stays she hadn't come to. I told him in one long stream, and he listened the way good doctors listen, completely without rushing me to the point. When I finished, there was a pause. Peggy, he said, you've spent your entire career making sure other people didn't fall apart. When's the last time you let yourself be the patient? I didn't have an answer. You've got $300,000 in that woman's life and nothing left for yourself. Your blood pressure is a problem, your sleep is a problem, and you just told me you skipped medication to cover someone else's bill. His voice was firm but not unkind. That's not love anymore, Peg. That's an emergency. I drove back to Portland that night. 7 hours in the dark, just me and the road, and the radio turned low. I got home at 2 in the morning, made tea I didn't drink, and sat at my kitchen table with the old accordion folder where I kept every significant financial document I'd ever handled, every receipt, every wire transfer confirmation, every informal note about money given. I added it all up, $310,000. In my own handwriting, I stared at it for a long time. Then I took a clean sheet of paper and wrote at the top, what if I had spent this on myself? I didn't answer it that night. I just sat with it the way you sit with the diagnosis you've just received, not ready to act, but no longer able to pretend you don't know. I went to bed at 4 in the morning and slept for 10 hours straight, first time in years. Monday morning, April 14th, 2025. I called Sandra Okafor. Sandra was a family law and property attorney I'd been referred to years ago. Sharp, direct, the kind of voice that makes you feel like things are going to be handled. I needed that voice badly. I laid out the situation. My name on the deed, 85,000 contributed, a mortgage I'd co-signed. And then the thing I'd only half understood until Sandra helped me see it clearly. Diane and Trevor were already in financial trouble. 3 weeks before the birthday, Diane had mentioned offhandedly that Trevor was dealing with a cash flow thing, and they'd had to let a couple things slide. I'd filed it away at the time without fully grasping what it meant. Sandra made some calls, came back to me within 48 hours. They're 2 months behind on the mortgage, she said. Mr. Briggs lost a significant lawsuit last quarter, and the client penalties hit their reserves hard. Based on their current position, I'd expect a third missed payment to follow. She paused. Now, because you are both a co-signer and a listed co-owner on the deed, you have real legal standing here. They cannot remove you from that deed without your signature. And if they default on the loan, You have grounds to exercise your ownership rights and recover your initial investment. Something settled in me. Not anger, clarity. The same feeling I got in the ER when a chaotic situation resolved into something I knew how to handle. What do I need to do? I asked. That week, I took 3 steps. Step 1, I went to my bank and closed the joint emergency account I'd opened for Diane in 2018, the one I'd been quietly adding to just in case. Balance, $11,200. Every cent transferred to my personal account. The teller, a young woman named Brittany who always remembered my name, glanced at the screen and then at me. You sure about this one, Mrs. Hartwell? Absolutely sure, I said. Step 2, I called Carol Simmons at the mortgage bank and formally requested a review of the loan status and a full accounting of my rights as co-owner. I asked them to send a formal notice to Diane and Trevor. I wanted them to know I knew. Step 3. I went downstairs and knocked on Ruth Calloway's door. Ruth lived 2 floors below me, 72 years old, retired drama teacher, small and fierce with silver hair and a bun and a laugh you could hear from the hallway. She'd watched me go through every hard thing in the 11 years we'd been neighbors. She brought soup when I was sick, watered my plants when I traveled, never once asked for anything in return. She was the kind of friend most people are lucky to find once in a lifetime. I sat in her kitchen and told her everything, including the things I'd never said out loud before. The medication, the $9,000, the hospital stays Diane hadn't come to. Ruth listened without interrupting. When I finished, she set her coffee cup down very carefully, the way you set something down when you don't trust your hands, and looked at me. Peggy Ann Hartwell, she said, you spent 35 years keeping other people alive. It is long past time somebody took care of you. I'm working on it, I said. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand hard. Good, and I'm going to help you. Here is what I want you to understand about what I did next. I did not disappear to punish Diane. I did not engineer a dramatic exit to make her suffer or prove a point. I am 67 years old. I have watched too many people spend their last good years on anger to want any part of that. I disappeared because I needed to start over, completely. The way you sometimes have to take a patient out of their environment entirely before they have any chance of getting better. For years, decades, honestly, I had kept a folded travel magazine article in the drawer of my nightstand. It was about Asheville, North Carolina. Mountains, rivers, an arts district, a community of older adults who had decided that retirement wasn't the end of something, but the beginning of something else. Every few years, I'd unfold it, read it, refold it, put it back. Always too busy. Always something else. Always Diane. I called a real estate agent in Asheville on Wednesday. By Friday, I had a short-term furnished rental lined up in the River Arts District, a 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a converted building, available May 1st. I bought a plane ticket. One way. Then I sat down to write the letter, not 18 pages. I'm a nurse, not a novelist. 2.5 pages. Clear, specific, no excess. Diane, I've spent 38 years being everything you needed. I was so focused on keeping you afloat that I forgot to learn how to swim myself. By the time you read this, I'll be gone, not because I'm angry and not because I've stopped loving you, but because I finally understand that there is a version of my life I have never lived and I am running out of time to live it. Attached, you'll find several documents: a formal notice from my attorney regarding my co-ownership of your property, a cancellation of the supplemental health insurance I've been paying for your family, $840 a month, which I'll now be directing toward my own care, and a full accounting of the $310,000 I have contributed to your life over the past 20 years. I'm not asking you to repay it. I just think you should see it all at once in a single document. I don't regret any of it. I gave that money and that time out of love, real love, even when it was imperfect, even when it became something else. But I am done confusing love with self-erasure. Your life will look different without me in it. I hope it teaches you something worth knowing. I love you. I always will. Mock sealed the envelope, wrote Diane's name on the front, and gave it to Ruth along with the spare key to my apartment. Her instructions: wait until the first week of May, then go to Diane's house in person. Tell her she hadn't been able to reach me, had used the spare key, found the apartment empty. hand her the letter. Ruth had taught drama for 22 years. She knew exactly what to do. The night before I left, I sat in my apartment and looked at the furniture I'd had for a decade, the photos on the wall, the kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals mostly for one. I felt unexpectedly very little grief. What I felt instead was something I hadn't felt in so long I barely recognized it at first. Lightness. May 3rd, 2025. I drove out of Portland at 6 in the morning. I chose to drive rather than fly, 2,700 miles, 4 days, alone. I stopped in places I'd never been. Boise, Salt Lake City, Denver, the long flat stretch of Kansas that surprised me with a quiet beauty I hadn't expected. I stayed in small motels with thin walls and ate at diners where the coffee was hot and nobody knew my name. And with every mile, I felt something unknotting in my chest that had been knotted for a very long time. I pulled into Asheville on the evening of May 6th as the sun was going down behind the Blue Ridge Mountains, turning the sky that deep orange pink that makes you feel like you're inside a painting. I rolled the windows down. The air smelled like pine and something floral I couldn't name. I found my building in the River Arts District, carried my bags up 3 flights of stairs, slowly, because 67, and stepped into the apartment. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, a window looking out over a narrow street lined with old brick buildings, and beyond the rooftops, just visible at the right angle, the mountains. I stood at that window for a long time. I made it, I thought. Just that. I made it. The first week, I did very little, and I did it on purpose. I walked in the mornings with no destination, no phone, no agenda. I found a coffee shop 3 blocks away, where the barista's name was Tyler, and he made an oat milk latte so good. I came back every single morning and sat at the corner table and read something I hadn't done with any consistency in years. About 10 days in, I saw Dr. Patricia Owens, a primary care physician I'd found through the local medical network. She reviewed my records from Portland, ran tests, and looked at me with the particular expression doctors use when they want to be direct. Your blood pressure is still elevated. Your A1C is in the pre-diabetic range, and based on your history, it looks like you've been managing these things reactively, putting out fires instead of preventing them. I know, I said. I was a charge nurse for 35 years. I know exactly what I've been doing wrong. She almost smiled. Well, then you know what we're going to do. We built a real treatment plan, medication properly adjusted, diet changes, regular movement. My body, it turned out, responded remarkably well when I actually paid attention to it. I also found the Saturday hiking group, a loose collection of seniors who met at a trailhead on the edge of town every weekend. First Saturday, I was at the back of the pack, pretending I wasn't breathing harder than I wanted to admit. First time, said the woman next to me. That obvious? Only because I was exactly where you are 8 months ago. She stuck out her hand, Beverly Hartley, former CPA, current work in progress. Beverly was 64, originally from Cincinnati, with a dry wit and a laugh that came out as more of a bark. She'd moved to Asheville too earlier, after her son and daughter-in-law had spent the better part of a decade treating her like a combination personal accountant and free childcare. She'd set boundaries and they'd accused her of being selfish. She'd moved anyway. We've walked together every Saturday since, and in those Saturday mornings, coffee from a thermos, mountain air, nobody needing anything from either of us. I found something I hadn't experienced in decades. Just easy, uncomplicated friendship. Ruth delivered the letter on May 8th, 2025. I was sitting on my little balcony in Asheville that evening with a glass of Malbec, watching the mountains go dark when Diane's name lit up my phone. I let it ring. She called back immediately. I let it ring again. Third call, I answered. Mom. Her voice was high and tight, the way it gets when she's trying to hold herself together and not quite managing. Where are you? Ruth came to the house. She said she couldn't reach you for 2 days. She used your spare key and your apartment was just empty. What's going on? Are you okay? I'm fine, Diane. I'm exactly where I need to be. Which is where? Tell me where you are. Somewhere far away. Which is what you asked for. A long pause. When she spoke again, the tightness was gone, replaced by something flat. This is about the deed. This isn't about the deed. Mom, This is about the fact that I drove 6 hours to bring you a birthday cake and sat at your table for 2 hours while nobody asked me a single question about my own life. This is about being told on your 38th birthday that I throw off your rhythm. I kept my voice even. This is about me finally understanding that what I was doing wasn't love anymore. It was damage, and I'm done doing damage. I didn't mean it the way it came out. Maybe not. But it came out because some part of you meant it, and some part of me needed to hear it. I looked out at the mountains, just silhouettes now, against the darkening sky. That money, Diane, the insurance, the accounts, the deed, I need those things for myself now. For my health, my retirement, my life. That's what the letter explains. Mom, come on. The kids' insurance, what are we supposed to? Trevor's firm carries insurance. The kids are covered. You know that. Silence. Do you need me? I said quietly, or do you need what I provide? No answer, which was its own answer. I love you, Diane. That hasn't changed and it won't. But the version of me who drove down with that cake, she's gone. She's not coming back. I picked up my wine glass. Good night, sweetheart. I hung up. She called back 6 more times. I let it go to voicemail. I sat on that balcony until the mountains disappeared into the dark and the sky over Asheville filled with more stars than I'd ever seen from Portland. And I felt, underneath all the complicated grief of it, something I hadn't felt since before Robert died, free. 3 weeks later, Sandra called. Sit down, she said. Trevor had filed a motion in Oregon Circuit Court requesting a formal evaluation of my mental competency. His argument, that my sudden departure from my home, my decision to sever financial ties, and my relocation to another state constituted behavior consistent with cognitive decline, or, and this was the part that genuinely took my breath away, undue outside influence. He was arguing, in legal language, that I might be losing my mind, and that the documents I'd signed before leaving could therefore be invalid. I sat with that for a moment. He's way out of his lane, Sandra said. He's a real estate attorney filing a competency motion. This isn't his area. He has no medical basis. And frankly, the argument is going to fall apart under the most basic scrutiny. But we do need to respond formally. What do we need? Documented evidence of your competency, current medical records, psychological clearance, and frankly, the more thorough, the better. If we can show you we're not only mentally sound, but actively improving your health and finances, the motion collapses on its own. I called James that afternoon. He had already been contacted by Sandra's office and had pulled everything from my time at St. Mary's. Annual cognitive screenings, psychological evaluations, 12 years of health records. All clean, all documented. Dr. Owens provided a current assessment, blood pressure trending down, A1C improving, patient demonstrating exemplary engagement with her own healthcare management. Beverly, 30 years as a CPA, sat at my kitchen table with me for an entire Saturday afternoon and helped me build a comprehensive financial document. Every decision's April 12th, cross-referenced with dates, amounts, and rationale. The account closure, the insurance cancellation, the legal consultations, the Asheville lease, a small investment with a local financial advisor, every single one documented, dated, and rational. Sandra submitted the full package. Trevor's motion was dismissed 6 weeks after it was filed. But here is what I want to say about that experience, because I think it matters. When I found out what Trevor had done, my first reaction was not anger. It was exhaustion, because I recognized it. I had seen it before in family members of patients who suddenly became very concerned about a loved one's mental state when an inheritance or an asset was at stake. The I'm worried about her that is actually, I'm worried about what happens to me. Trevor wasn't worried about my mind. He was worried about his mortgage. And as I sat with that, I found myself thinking about Diane. Not the woman who had hurt me, but a woman who had done 13 years married to a man who, when things got hard, reached first for a legal weapon, who responded to problems with tactics rather than honesty. What was it like, I wondered, to live inside that every single day? June 3rd, 2025. Diane requested a video call. I almost didn't answer. But something, the nurse in me, the one trained to assess rather than avoid, made me tap the green button. She looked different. The polish was still there. She was Diane. She'd always looked put together. But underneath it, something had shifted. There were shadows under her eyes that concealer wasn't fully covering. Her shoulders curved forward in a way I'd never seen. Hi, Mom. Hi, Diane. She looked at me for a moment, taking in the Asheville kitchen behind me, the morning light, the relaxed way I was sitting. She would tell me later that I looked better than she'd seen me look in years. Trevor told me about the competency filing, she said. I want you to know I didn't know he was going to do that. I didn't find out until after it was already filed. She pressed her lips together. I was furious. I believe you, Mom. She stopped. I've been trying to figure out what to say to you for weeks. I have like 40 drafts of a text I never sent because everything I write sounds like an excuse. Maybe because it is. She flinched, but she didn't look away. Yeah, you're probably right. A beat. I've been seeing a therapist since all of this. I hadn't expected that. She keeps asking me this one question, Diane continued, and I can't stop thinking about it. She asks, "What did your mother model for you about what a woman is supposed to do?" Her voice was quieter now, and the answer is, give everything. Never stop, never say you're tired, never ask for anything back. Just keep going, no matter what. She exhaled slowly. And I watched you do that my whole life, Mom. I loved you for it. And I think somewhere along the way, I also just accepted that that was what you were for, like it was just how things worked. I let the silence sit between us. Diane, I said finally, I need to ask you something. Not about the house or the money or Trevor, just about you. I leaned toward the camera. Are you okay? Not the situation, you personally. She opened her mouth, closed it. Her eyes filled. No, she said. I really don't think I am. That was the first fully honest thing my daughter had said to me in a very long time. And across 1,400 miles and a phone screen, I felt something complicated move through me. Not quite forgiveness yet, but something in the same neighborhood. Recognition, grief. Love, still stubborn underneath everything. I'm not coming back, I said. I need you to understand that. The life we had before, I can't go back to that. I know, but I'm not gone either. Not completely. I wrap both hands around my coffee mug. When you're ready to actually talk, not about logistics, but about what a real relationship between two grown women looks like, I'm here. I'm in Asheville, and I'm not going anywhere. She cried for a little while. I let her. When she pulled herself together, she said, Is it nice, Asheville? It's very nice. Do you like it there? More than I expected to. She nodded slowly. Good, she said softly. That's good, Mom. September 2025. Sandra called again. The foreclosure proceedings were underway. Diane and Trevor had missed a third payment. And in the documentation that surfaces during foreclosure review, something came to light. The $140,000 I had given Diane in 2015 to open Lumiere, the money I had borrowed against my own apartment to provide. She had deposited it into the spa's startup account, but from there, over the following 6 months, Trevor had moved $47,000 of it into a separate LLC in his name only, an account Diane had no access to, an account she apparently knew nothing about. He had quietly taken nearly a third of the money I had sacrificed for my daughter and redirected it into his own pocket. Sandra delivered the information carefully. I listened, I thanked her, I hung up. I sat in my apartment for a long time. Then I called Diane. I told her exactly what Sandra had found. I gave her the account names, the transfer dates, the amounts. I told her plainly and completely. No softening, because softening doesn't actually help anyone. She was silent for a long moment. He told me, she said finally, her voice barely there, that the startup costs were higher than expected, that the money went to contractors. I know he did. Mom, she stopped. I didn't know. I know that too, Diane. Another silence. And then, in a voice I hadn't heard from her since she was a little girl who'd scraped her knee and come running to me, what do I do? After 35 years of nursing, I have answered that question in 100 different kinds of emergencies. And what I know, what I have always known, is that the answer is never the dramatic one. It's always the next small step. You call your own attorney, I said. Not Trevor's. Yours today. She did. Within weeks, the full picture emerged. Lumiere had been struggling for 2 years, but Diane hadn't known how badly because Trevor had been managing the financials and shielding her from the reality. She'd been running a business while largely in the dark about its actual state. When the spa finally had to close in the fall, Diane took a position as an esthetician at a smaller salon in Costa Mesa, no longer the owner, just an employee. She told me later it was a relief she hadn't expected. The weight of running something, of being responsible for staff and leases and quarterly reports. She hadn't realized how much of that stress she'd been carrying until it was gone. In November 2025, Diane filed for divorce. I didn't say I told you so. I just asked what she needed. Not money, not rescue. Just, what do you actually need right now? February 2026. A handwritten envelope appeared in my mailbox. Return address, an apartment in Costa Mesa. The handwriting was careful and uneven, the way children write when they're trying very hard. Inside were two pieces of paper and a folded drawing. Dear Grandma, Peggy, Dad is gone now. Mom told us some of what happened. She said she made mistakes and that she was really sorry. We don't totally understand everything, but we know you love us because you always showed us. We miss you a lot. Colton misses the way you make eggs on Sunday with the crispy edges. I miss how you always remembered which stuffed animals had names and which ones didn't. Mom said you're in a place with mountains. We looked it up and it seems really pretty. We hope you're happy there. Can we call you sometime? We made you something. Love, Avigo, and Colton. The drawing was on a sheet of construction paper in marker. On the left, Colton had drawn a figure with gray hair, me, I assumed, standing on a mountain with arms stretched wide. On the right, Ava had drawn a table with what I recognized after a moment as a red velvet cake. Above both drawings, in Ava's rounder handwriting, "We are proud of you, Grandma." I read the letter twice, set it on the kitchen table, went to the window and stood there for a while, looking at the mountains, not quite ready to feel all of it at once. I called Beverly. "Come over," she said immediately. I walked the 3 blocks to her place. She put the kettle on without asking, sat across from me, and waited. I read her the letter out loud. By the time I got to the part about the stuffed animals, my voice had given out completely. Beverly is not a crier. She's practical, and she deals with things head on, and she does not do sentimentality easily. But she reached across the table and grabbed both of my hands and held them very tight, and she didn't say a single word for a long time, which was exactly right. When I got home, I called Diane's number. She answered and said quickly, "They told me they wrote to you. I hope that was okay. I hope it wasn't too. Can I talk to them?" A pause. Then, softer, away from the phone, "Guys, it's Grandma Peggy." The sound of two kids scrambling over each other to get to the phone is not something that can be adequately described. I'll just say that Colton talked for 11 minutes about a science project involving baking soda and vinegar, and Ava talked for 9 minutes about a book she was reading, about a girl who can communicate with horses, and I laughed more in those 20 minutes than I had in the past year combined. When they handed the phone back to Diane, there was a brief quiet between us. "They miss you," she said. "I miss them too. Mom, I know we're not all the way there yet, but I'm working on it with my therapist, really working on it, on understanding what I did and why, and who I want to be from here." Her voice was steadier than it had been in months. "I just wanted you to know that. That's the most important work there is," I said. "Yeah." A small exhale. "I'm starting to get that." March 2026. By this point, I had started writing, just posts on a small blog I'd set up at Ruth's suggestion, a place to work through what I was thinking and learning and unlearning. It had a few hundred regular readers, mostly women I'd connected with through the Asheville community. I called it What Nurses Know. One morning in early March, I opened my email and found a message from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, "You don't know me, but I know your story. Mrs. Hartwell, my name is Lisa Gallagher. I'm 43 and I live in Denver. I was married to Diane for 18 months, from 2009 to 2010. I left because I felt invisible in that marriage, like there was no room for me, because every emotional and financial need Diane had was already being met somewhere else. I spent years feeling guilty about leaving, wondering if I'd just given up too soon on something that could have worked. A friend shared one of your blog posts last month. I've read everything you've written since. And for the first time in 15 years, I feel like I actually understand what happened in that marriage. Not because of anything you said about Diane, but because I recognize the dynamic. The person who never had to face consequences because someone was always there to catch her. There was no room for a real partnership because the most important relationship in her life was already filling that space, just not in a healthy way. I'm not writing to cause any trouble. I'm writing because your words help me finally set something down that I've been carrying for a very long time. Thank you for that. Lisa, I read that email 4 times. Then I put on my walking shoes and went out and walked for 3 hours through the River Arts District, up into the neighborhoods where old trees arch over the sidewalks, out to a small park at the edge of town where you can sit by a creek and see the mountains. I sat on a bench there for a long time. I had spent 38 years protecting Diane from consequences. I had called it love, and it was love. I want to be clear about that. I never doubted that I loved my daughter. But love that absorbs every consequence before it can land, love that stands between a person and reality so completely that they never have to fully stand on their own. That kind of love doesn't protect anyone. It just delays the reckoning. And while it's delaying, other people pay the price. Lisa had paid part of that price. Diane was paying another part now. And I had been paying my own share for 38 years without fully understanding that the debt was one I'd taken on myself. I went home and wrote the longest post I'd ever put on that blog. I wrote about enabling, about the difference between supporting someone and scaffolding them so completely they never learn to stand, about how you can give everything you have to someone and still somehow fail to give them the thing they actually need, about how the hardest thing I had ever done, harder than any night shift, harder than any emergency, harder than losing Robert, was admitting that my love, imperfect and enormous as it was, had not been enough on its own. In the first week, around 800 people read it. More shared it in the weeks that followed. Ruth called from Portland to tell me it was being passed around in a Facebook group she was part of for women over 60. Peggy, she said, I think you might be really onto something. It is June 17th, 2026. I am 67 years old. I have been in Asheville for just over 13 months. Let me tell you what my life looks like now. Not as a fairy tale, not as proof that everything turned out perfectly, but as an honest accounting from a woman who is still very much in the middle of things. My blood pressure is normal for the first time in 4 years. My A1C has come out of the pre-diabetic range. Dr. Owens used the word remarkable at my last appointment, and I told her it wasn't remarkable at all. It's what happens when you stop pouring your body's resources into crises that aren't yours to manage. I take pottery twice a week at a studio 2 blocks from my apartment. I am not good at it. My hands still shake slightly from years of tension that are slowly unwinding, and my bowls come out lopsided, and my handles don't always stay attached. My instructor Zoe says I'm improving. Beverly says my work looks charmingly abstract. I keep every single piece I make, and they line the windowsill in my kitchen, all their imperfect shapes catching the morning light, and I love them. I hike with the Saturday group most weekends. Beverly and I are in the middle of the pack now, not the back. That feels significant. The blog has grown steadily, several hundred regular readers who show up each week, mostly women in their 60s and 70s who recognize something in what I write. I hear from them in the comments and sometimes by email. Their messages are some of the most honest things I've ever read. I try to respond to everyone. Financially, Sandra's work on the co-ownership claim resulted in a settlement of $103,000 from the sale of the Newport Beach property, my $85,000 original contribution plus accrued equity. Combined with my pension and the savings I'd been rebuilding since I stopped sending money into Diane's emergencies, I am, for the first time at 67, genuinely secure. Not wealthy. Secure. There is a difference, and I understand it now in a way I never did before. Diane and I talk on the phone every couple of weeks. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, always it's more honest than it used to be. She is still in therapy. She is making the kind of slow, unglamorous progress that doesn't make for a tidy story, but is the only kind that actually sticks. She is learning at 38 how to manage money and face consequences and ask for help in ways that don't drain the people around her. It's hard work. I'm proud of her for doing it. Colton and Ava are coming to visit in August. I've already booked us spots at the pottery studio. I figure if my bowls are lopsided, a 10-year-old's are going to be magnificently, gloriously lopsided, and we'll all laugh about it. I've made up the pull-out couch with the good sheets, and I know exactly which trail I'm taking them on, and I've been looking forward to it for months. I think about Robert sometimes, not with the sharp grief of early loss, but with the warmth you carry for someone who shaped a large part of who you became, even though they weren't there for most of it. I think he would have been a good father. I think he would have let Diane fail at small things when she was young, so she could learn how to get back up. I couldn't do that alone, running on empty, terrified of adding one more hard thing to her life. So I caught every fall, and I kept catching until I had nothing left to catch with. I think about Lisa Gallagher in Denver, finally setting something down she'd carried for 15 years. I wrote back to her. We've exchanged a few emails. She's doing well. And I think sometimes about the woman I was on April 12th, 2025, driving south in the dark at 5 in the morning with a red velvet cake in the back seat, so certain that love meant showing up and giving and never stopping. She wasn't wrong. She was just incomplete. She hadn't yet learned that you cannot pour from a vessel that has been emptied out. I know that now, not as a concept, as something lived, tested, confirmed. I am Margaret Hartwell. I'm 67 years old. I am sitting at my desk in Asheville, North Carolina, with the Blue Ridge Mountains outside my window and a lopsided pottery bowl on my shelf, and a small patch of life that is, for the first time, entirely my own. I spent 35 years keeping other people's hearts beating. It turns out the hardest heart to take care of was always my own. But I'm taking care of it now, and after everything, that is enough.
Before I let you go, I want to say something that's just between us. And Peggy's story got to me, not because of the money, and not even because of what Diane said to her, but because of that image of her sitting alone in a hospital room, calling her daughter and saying, "That's okay, honey, I'm fine." When she absolutely was not fine. How many of us have done that? How many of us have done that? And how many times have we swallowed what we actually needed because someone else's need felt more urgent, more valid, more worth the space? Peggy didn't walk away from her daughter. She walked toward herself. At 67, with 2 suitcases and a folded magazine article she'd kept in her nightstand for years. I think that might be one of the bravest things a person can do. If something in this story landed for you, if you heard yourself somewhere in it, I hope you sit with that. You don't have to move to Asheville. You just have to start.
Thank you for being here with me today.